everyone, and welcome back to another episode of A Girl's Guide to STEAM. I'm Hallie Huber, and I'm joined here in the Spark studio with Miss Jody Singer, the 14th director of the Marshall Space Flight Center and the first female director of the Marshall Space Flight Center. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about Miss Singer's notable career, as well as the way that STEAM has impacted her career, and also dive into a few advice questions. So let's dive in, full steam ahead. Well, Miss Singer, how are you?
Doing great today. Glad to be here. A lot of fun.
Well, I'm so excited that you're here as well. Well, before we dive into any of the other questions, first, why don't you just tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, I'm Jody Singer. I am now retired from NASA. I had over a 38-plus year career with NASA.
Wow.
The last 5 years, I was the center director, and I have been blessed with a wonderful career with a lot of mentors, and I really have enjoyed my career. It's one of those things that I couldn't have imagined when I started out that I would be so blessed to be involved in something that's bigger than yourself, launching humans into space. But I will tell you, it was a hard road sometimes, but still so rewarding, particularly when you have the opportunity to work with such great folks. And so now that I'm retired, I get to reflect back on it. And now I'm in my, as I call it, my re-inspirement mode.
Oh.
So I've been retired for a year, and so now I am just looking around and trying to decide what my next path will be. I am retired, so, I am having fun with my grandchildren and my husband and my dogs and, having fun doing that, investing in myself. But it is really fun to now be able to interact with other women and other professionals in the area and just really see what's out there and find ways to give back to the community and to, as I like to say, pay it forward.
Yeah, well, that is so awesome, just hearing about your amazing career and the way that you're still inspired to continue to pursue your passions and find your next step within your career. So first, let's take it back to the beginning. So you mentioned that whenever you were younger, you never would have dreamed that you would have gotten to this point. So tell me a little bit about what your interaction with STEAM was whenever you were younger. Were you drawn to NASA? Was it the STEAM fields that totally just took you in? Tell me a bit about that.
Well, I would say a lot of it is due to, obviously my parents, and but I would say a lot of what encouraged me. I've always liked science.
Mm-hmm.
I love looking up at the stars and imagining what was going on, and that was always intriguing to me. And then as I, was growing up in grammar school, high school, I went to Hartselle.
Okay.
So I'm a local girl. So I grew up in North Alabama. So, knowing about NASA and Marshall Space Flight Center was one of those things that you knew about.
Right.
But, saying would I have a career in it, I didn't know. But like I said, in Hartselle, we had a lot of great teachers that were strong in math and science. And I would say that really was one of the things that helped intrigue me and keep me going in it. Because I know a lot of times young girls at an early age may have an inspiration, but sometimes they don't see their path and they don't have that encouragement. I was fortunate enough to have that encouragement. And as a result of it, as I graduated high school, I admit I didn't still know exactly what I wanted to do. But I knew I wanted to go to the University of Alabama.
Yeah.
And I know that's not how you pick your career, is you pick your college first. But as a result of that, I had some friends that were already in engineering. And, one of the things I learned to do was go talk to them and find out what they were doing, what they were studying, and why they wanted to study it. And then in addition to that, my mother was a big influence in my life. She encouraged me to go and talk to different engineers or folks in industry. And, they would talk to me and ask me questions of what I wanted to do and why I wanted to do it and why I was inspired by it. And basically talking to them, they encouraged me that said, I believe you would like engineering since you like the science. And maybe there's different versions of engineering, because I mean, I didn't know there were different, curriculums necessarily in engineering. I thought engineering was engineering. But they, talked to me about the different types of engineering work. And as a result of that, I picked an engineering, degree, and it started out in industrial engineering and finished in industrial engineering. And as a result of it, it was one of those things that taught me not only engineering, but it also taught me a lot about systems thinking. And so that was really what inspired me and kept me going. And it was a lot of fun. It was challenging, I admit. Engineering can be challenging and very humbling. And in my time, many of the times I was the only female in my class or in my room. And so you think about that. You look around and say, okay, am I supposed to be here? And then you really start having faith in yourself, and you lean on students around you and, the teachers, and you start finding your niche, even though it's hard.
Yeah.
And to me, that was really, really the start of, saying, okay, the engineering career. And as a result of the engineering career and the STEM activity, it opened up doors that I'd never even imagined. My first job was with General Motors, and I was a methods engineer. And I worked there for a little over a year, and it was truly my industrial engineering background, systems thinking. And I had also, at that point in time, put in an application at NASA. NASA wasn't hiring when I graduated, but then a year later, they called me and said, would you like to come work at NASA? And, it was kind of one of those things of, wow, yes, I would. And, it started from that career, like I said, a 38-year career that I never imagined the steps I would take and the steps I would have the opportunities to take to get to the eventual job of center director, because I never thought, center director was in my reach. When you look at the first center director was Werner von Braun, and you say, well, those are some big shoes to fill. And for over 50 years, there had never been a female in the center director job. So, looking at that and saying, could I do it from day one? It was like, wow, I thought it was too far out of reach. But as I grew in my career and worked many different areas, I started seeing, I guess you'd say, that at the end of the tunnel, the light sparkling, and saying, well, yes, one step at a time, I could do that. And I started growing in my leadership abilities and, I guess you'd say, confidence in yourself, your competencies, the opportunities I had. And so, when I had been working there for about 25 to 30 years, it was kind of like, well, there's an opportunity that I could do more. And again, I thought the center director job was still a little bit too far out of reach. But it's amazing when you have people that invest in you, a lot of mentors, and given opportunities. And eventually ended up as a deputy center director with Todd May as the center director. And he put a lot of investment in me. And as a result, when he took on a different opportunity, I was in, I guess you'd say, in running for the job. I still had to compete for it and, do the interviews. And so when I was selected for it, it was like, wow, I did it. But again, you don't do it by yourself, but it's like you say, it's one step at a time. And, there's things that happen, good and bad, that teach you lessons and character building experiences. And it's what you do with those experiences that build you and bring you forward.
Yeah, well, I just love hearing all of that, hearing your experience, that you had that passion of science from such a young age. And like you said, having those mentors, having that sort of community is so important. And like you said, in your college years as well, of being able to have other people to lean on to help support. Because I know that could be really daunting at that time of being the only girl in an engineering class. I guess, do you think that sort of experience helped you to be able to get into the position of the director, of being the first female director, breaking those boundaries?
I think it did. I think, every experience you go through shapes you for the next steps and prepares you. But I did learn, and that's one of the things that I like to talk to many students about, is just because you don't see someone who looks just like you in the room, don't let that be a deterrent. It It can make you be very special and stand out. And then also one of the things that you have to do is, because you are maybe unique in many ways, is don't let that be the pressure that you put on yourself that says, if I don't do everything right and I'm not totally successful, then I have hurt the other folks that are around me that look like me. I have enabled them not to do what they want to do. And so you got to make sure you cut yourself some slack. It's always fun to have the challenge. It's fun to find the ways to be able to be yourself. And sometimes that's the hardest thing, and fit in when you're different. But finding that way and being able to build relationships with people, not being afraid to ask for help, not trying to do it all, getting your ego out of the way, is some of the steps that help make you successful. And like you say, when you're scared, those are usually the things that you need to do when something intimidates you or pushes you out of your comfort zone. I found that those are the exact things you needed to do, because that's what would make you grow.
Ooh, that's hard hitting right there. Yeah, you're right. The experiences that do force that uncomfortable growth, they're there to help challenge you and to help just develop you.
Right.
That's so important.
It is.
And okay, so basically you said that you're specifically drawn to industrial engineering. Why industrial engineering?
Industrial engineering because, number one, I wanted an engineering degree.
Okay.
I wanted the opportunity to be able to blend the systems thinking. And it was the systems thinking that not only involved, at that point in time, manufacturing, but to understand processes and efficiencies and being able to take processes and improve on them was one of the things. And it had a little bit of business flair. And in addition to that, you still had the engineering curriculum. So you still had to take all the physics, all the math, all the differential equations, the things that you still had to learn. And then in addition to that, the way it was taught at Alabama, you also got to take electives in like civil engineering or chemical engineering. So you got to take, as I call it, a plethora of things that gave you vision of how to be able to understand different worlds and be, again, kind of going back to the systems thinker. And being able to apply it to diagnose things, see how it fits, what you need to do. And that was really appealing to me, because I really didn't, at that point in time, knew that my expertise was not going to be, I'm going to be the top technical expert in a certain area. I really wanted to be broad and understand how to connect the dots and take a systems approach. And so that's why it really, really appealed to me. And is one of those things that, I guess I say hindsight's 20/20, but it really is one of those things and those skills that pay forward for me so much as I grew as a leader and as I was working in more complex technical systems in my NASA career.
Right.
And it made a huge difference of being able to see the big picture.
Yeah, that was actually kind of the route that I was going to go with questioning about how do you think specifically that the system sort of thinking prepared you for those leadership roles? Because in that sort of systems thinking, there's a lot of different complex parts. And likewise, in a top leadership position of an organization, there's a lot of different complex parts and a lot of different departments that you're having to work with and manage. So I guess that definitely did prepare you, but is there any sort of specific instance that you want to talk about?
I can think of many, many instances. I can think as recent as the COVID pandemic when I was center director. First time we were all living through how to operate with all the things that were going on with the COVID environment from, everybody being at home. But you still had to execute your business. You still had to make sure that all the IT equipment was in place. People were learning how to communicate, so it was one of those things that many of the times you don't have the answer, so you have to rely on many people and many skills from many different areas, and not just one area is the optimal way. And so you have to balance between those objectives, and then you also have to balance with the needs of the individual
Yeah.
and the team and the mission you're working on. So it really helps you kind of pull things together to find the best solution, because not one solution works for everyone, but yet you have to have consistency. So those kind of helped you bring out those discussions, bring out the different needs, and that's one of the things that, from that perspective, and I can definitely reflect back in my career in the space shuttle world. One in particular is when I was selected as the solid rocket booster project manager.
Dang.
And in the shuttle world, the booster is one of those things that is key of the propulsion systems. It's what was helping the shuttle, and now the Space Launch System be able to escape Earth's atmosphere. And so it's really the main propulsion there. But the kind of where I'm going from that standpoint is on being the project manager. You were responsible for making sure that the hardware for the different launches, that you delivered it, that it was in the right shape, right configuration, ready to go, that it integrated with the vehicle itself, and that entire vehicle helped the shuttle and the orbiter be able to launch.
Yeah.
But with that, you had to bring many of the aspects of the technical issues, the weather, launch readiness, everything about it, to bring it to a solution so that you could have a conversation, get that out, so that you knew you were ready to go and to be able to launch. And, you never know, with hardware, it's humbling. And so you work hard to build it consistently, have it ready to go, but it's very, humbling with hardware. And specific example is my first launch as the solid rocket booster manager is, we went through all the process. You do the countdown, 10, 9, 8, you're at the Cape, you delivered your hardware, your knees are knocking, your heart's pounding, you launch. We had a successful launch, and you do a breathe, I'm taking a breath. And, we launched, we had a mission, and unfortunately on the way back from the orbiter, it was the Columbia mission, STS-107, where we lost the astronauts. So my first launch as booster manager I instantly ended up in being all the other elements too, into, the incident investigation where we lost 7 astronauts. And so then you're having to lead a team, and it was my first launch with the booster, so I wasn't the resident expert. I was the leader of the team. And so the Columbia Accident Investigation Board that comes in and is drilling you on what happened, were you a part of it, and they're also questioning, was the project manager is she competent, is she doing what she needs to do? So it really puts you on the hot seat, and can really shake your confidence on, can I do this job? But because of the relationship with the technical experts and everything about it, we were able to talk about the booster, be able to talk why we were ready to go, demonstrate we were, ready as we returned to flight. It was a 2.5-year process. And with that, you learned how to bring all the different aspects of people's concerns to the technical issues, to being able to talk about your readiness. But most of all, you build the friendships and the camaraderie that you don't do it by yourself. And that the key is, as a leader, is to enable the team to do their job. It's not for you to do their job, it's for them to do their job, but you to enable it and do it the best you can so that you bring the whole team forward, everyone feels valued, and as a result of it, you have, a successful process of being able to, return back to flight, which is one of those things that is extremely humbling. And, if I were just thinking about myself in general, I would say it was one of those things where you do really feel like, are people going to think I'm a fake? Are they worried that I'm capable of handling this job? And because of my ability to rely on the team and blessed to have a great team, we work together to be able to go forward. But it's one of those things that teaches you a lot of, it's not about what you know, it's your ability to lead a team and engage a team and to go forward.
Wow. That is really insightful, just hearing about how in leadership positions, it is all about that teamwork aspect, and being able to be a good leader is being able to enable your team to do the stuff that they're supposed to do. I guess in your early career at GMC, if we want to talk a little bit about that as well, how do you think that prepared you for your future positions? Because I know you briefly touched on it, but I'm a little interested in hearing more about that.
So my first job out of the University of Alabama was working for General Motors.
Okay.
And it was, number one, it was challenging for me because I had to move to Mississippi.
Yeah.
And I didn't know anyone in Mississippi. So that's one of the things of taking the challenge, pushing yourself out of your comfort zone. Mm-hmm. As far as working at General Motors, like I said, I was a methods engineer, which basically means I was in charge of the different car. There's a wire harnessed assembly that makes the entire car operate that has to be built.
Yeah.
And as a result of it, then you build it, and it has to fit within the car and operate the way it's supposed to. It is then shipped to Michigan, so it's placed in a car then, so that's part of the electronic harness for that car to operate. So with that, that was one of the things in engineering that scared me, was electrical systems.
Yeah,
and
sounds
so
like it.
That was a little challenging when they said, "Oh, you're going to be electric wire harness engineer." It was like, "Oh boy,
crap.
I'm in trouble." But that goes back again to having exposure, to electrical systems and stuff. But really, the thing that taught me was working with the people. Mm-hmm. And again, it comes back to relationships. I didn't know everything about building the car, or building the harness, or building what it took. There were folks that were literally on the assembly line that knew their job, and I had to work with them to make sure they made the wire harness assembly, that it met the requirements. But it was definitely people, and it was people that I had to toughen up because I was short blonde, southern blonde, talking to folks that most of them did not have some didn't even have a high school education. And so they lived, week paycheck to paycheck.
Oh,
and
wow.
So when you were trying to work with them on the assembly line, they had other things that were of higher importance to them, but they were dedicated to their job.
Right.
But you couldn't walk in and I've got the engineering degree, so you're going to do what I say.
Right.
They actually taught me.
Oh,
and so
wow.
working together, learning how to be tough, learning how to be respectful, learning how to lead, and to, kind of get out of my, I guess I'd say, young girl, young female on a job. You learn and you toughen up, and you learn then how to definitely deal with folks and how to be respectful and make them feel valued.
Yeah.
And as a result of that, you learn, again, as a team, how to build it. It's only as good as its weakest part. So you built the harness. It had to work. It had to ring out. If it didn't ring out, they'd ship it back to you, and, it's not something you want to deal with. But as a result of that, you learn how to do products. You learn how to be a team and how to have success. And really, that fast forward taught me how to deal with different people from different backgrounds, different relationships, and how to not just approach a problem from, this is how I see it going forward. It's really the ability to, yes, you see a problem a certain way, but to engage the team to see what their perspective is and how they see it, where their experience comes into play, their opportunities, their knowledge, their thoughts. And as a result of it, you get a very diverse, better discussion, better idea. And it doesn't matter who you are, you can always ask the right questions. And that also is one of the things that I learned going forward. Many of the time that I might not be the expert in a certain area, but because of being a systems thinker and being able to back up and hopefully ask the right questions, then you're able to engage and make a difference You don't always have to be like I said, the expert on the spot.
Mm-hmm.
You can help lead a team to get there, and that's really what a leader does, is help engage and enable the people to get to the right answer.
Yeah, I think it's really fascinating the way that you were talking about that experience, because you were not only mentioning the way of the system of GMC in general, but the system of dealing with people, of being able to use that sort of systems thinking, not only in the hard aspects of the job, but as well as the soft issues of communication and that sort of teamwork skills. So I think that's really interesting how that can be applied not only to the physical stuff, but also to the connections and teamwork aspects.
Absolutely, and that's one of the things that when I'm talking to mentoring different folks, and yes, as you know, a lot of women will come up to me and say, I want to be, in your steps one day. What do I do?
Yeah.
And, I definitely tell them, obviously you're building your competencies. You have to know your stuff, but again, you don't have to do it alone.
Right.
It's the willingness to ask for help and to be able to go forward. Build your competencies, letting people know what you can do, take challenging assignments. But really, one of the things that was a lesson learned in my career is it is important to be competent, but it's also very important to be competent in your soft skills. Because as a leader, that's one of the things that is so very, very, very important. And learning who you are as a leader, learning your soft spots, your hot points.
Mm-hmm.
If you understand yourself, then you can become a better leader, and you can understand how your style of leadership affects others. And you also then have a heightened awareness of not picking everybody that's just like you.
Right.
It's good to have the diversity and people that challenge you and give that thought. And if you're comfortable in yourself, then you definitely can be a better leader. Plus, you feel less defensive.
Right.
You're more willing to say, yeah, here's the discussion, here's the points and counterpoints, and you build that blended. And to me, that's what's so critical and really having a good decision and being a good leader.
Yeah, I definitely have to agree. I think all the talking points that you made just there were extremely insightful, especially about being able to take that approach from different types of individuals and being able to make a decision for the best of everybody. And so now that we've talked a little bit about GMC, why don't we dive into the very beginnings of NASA? So what specific position did you start with at NASA?
When I first began at NASA, I was, way back when, 1985, I was lucky enough to be involved in what they called a professional intern program. So I was a full-time NASA employee.
Okay.
But they were investing in trying to retool different skills at NASA. Kind of giving you a real quick snippet of it, if there had been a gap in hiring at NASA.
Mm-hmm.
So there were folks that were coming off of the Apollo. They had a lot of the shuttle development, but we were in a process of flying the shuttle and going forward.
Yeah.
So there were people that had retired and different things. So there are different skills that had I guess you'd say, for people leaving.
Yeah.
And they needed to rebuild. And so one of those opportunities was building, and again, it just happened to fit right in with me, what was in program planning.
Yeah.
And it was looking at, how do you estimate a program? How do you plan for it? What's the strategic planning? How do you make sure you get there? How do you collect the cost? How do you do these things? And it was a little different side of engineering than I was expecting, because you had to know the engineering part, but then you had to be able to pull what's it going to cost, what's the value added, what can you do, and be able to tell the story and sell it.
Wow.
And so as a result of that, that gave me I guess you'd say another systems, look and understanding risk. And so then that led me to the opportunity when the shuttle program had its first incident, which was Challenger.
Yeah.
They were looking for folks to volunteer to help with return to flight for that mission.
Oh.
And so it was an opportunity that someone said, would you volunteer and go over and work? And it was like, yes. So that's when I began my 25-year career in shuttle.
Wow.
First working with the main engine program project office.
Yeah.
And so that's the three engines that were at the bottom of the orbiter that, helped propel it.
Yeah.
And in that job, I got some experience in the business office as well as looking at logistics and things like that. And then from there, opportunity came in and said, would you like to go work at another office within the shuttle propulsion? And it was external tanks. So that's the big fuel tanks that supplied the oxygen and hydrogen for the engines.
Yeah.
And so, it was kind of, I got to see another element. And in that job, I became business manager and then evolved to the deputy project manager.
Wow.
And then from there, it's like then another opportunity came up, and I was asked to be a program deputy.
Yeah.
And then I was assigned the booster manager. So it's kind of like my different mentors.
Yeah.
And even though I stayed in shuttle for 20 years, I worked different jobs so that I was getting different exposure, different competencies, and all along the way supporting the launch of the system, because that's the ultimate, as I call it, the knee knocker, where you've built the parts, you have it ready, and then you have to go through all the flight readiness and prove it's ready. And, in this room of, 300 people, and you're defending, your organization and what you've done and working with the contractors. So it's, really getting up on a big stage in high pressure.
Yeah.
And that really evolved me then to, like you say, the thrill of the launch, but then the, wow, did we do it right? Have we done it right? And like I said, the unfortunate thing that you have the successes. I had over 110 launches that I've got to participate and be part of.
Yeah.
And, the ones that stick with you are the ones that didn't go so good. But even with those, it's the things that you learned. And, it kind of comes back to, again, how's the health of the team? Are you communicating? Do you have the right experts on the team when you need the skill? Are you listening to them? And not one person had to be the expert. And that was a little hard lesson for me, because being the only female project manager and doing different things, sometimes I put pressure on myself that said, they're going to think less of me if I don't know all the answers and know how to do it. And that was really where I had to, get rid of my ego and realize, it's okay, as I said, to ask for help. And learning and growing and being a part of it and working the team made a difference in that. Really prepared me then when the next opportunities came forward that said, okay, we're flying out the shuttle in 2012. We want to have a new vehicle. We've got to go to the moon. Would you like to be part of starting up a new program? And there were 4 of us that were started out on the Space Launch System that is now flying on the Artemis program. We've had 1 launch in November of 2022, and we're coming up on an Artemis 2 flight in the near future. But being part of an initial planning of a program and seeing it go through its infancy, where you're trying to sell it and get it going and bringing the team on board. We had to bring the whole team on board and set it up and make sure all the steps. It's kind of one of those things that keeps challenging you to step up a little bit more. And then you kind of find the leadership you step, and then you want to do more.
Right.
And all that kind of evolved as in my career of doing different things. And as a result of it, led to different opportunities.
Yeah, I think that's great that you, like you said, you gained experience in the different areas, even though it was still in that shuttle program. Being able to see those different aspects of it, I'm sure, helped you see the bigger picture in a way once you were in that leadership position. And I know that you mentioned that sometimes in those moments it kind of felt like, oh, well, I'm the only woman here. They're going to, think less of me or something. I think that's so important to hear, because I think one of the biggest setbacks or one of the biggest roadblocks is our own mind and the way that we keep ourselves from doing stuff. And so being able to hear that even from you in your amazing, successful career, that, it happens to everybody. I think that's so important to hear. And being able to, like you said, be able to take a look at your own ego and be able to be like, oh, wow, I didn't realize that I, had that sort of mindset. I need to kind of change it into that sort of learning mindset.
Right. Absolutely. And it was one of those things that was probably, I'd say, 10 years or well, no, more than that, about 20 years into my career is really where, as I said, there's a lot of times we all deal with what we call an imposter syndrome, where you're taking on leadership styles of other folks and you say, well, this is how my boss was successful, or this is how they taught me to do different things. But yet you still have to come up with your own recipe. And coming up with your own recipe is also being comfortable with yourself and who you are and your style of leadership. And to me, that really was a turning point for me as far as really going forward, because I will admit, a lot of folks will say, well, didn't everything always go the way you wanted it to? Looks like your career is very successful. And I say, no, there were a couple of the dream jobs that I was really shooting for, that I really thought was in my reach to have.
Yeah.
Even though I thought center director was not.
Right.
I thought there were a couple of jobs that I thought, I can do that job. But there were times where when I would apply on it or someone would say, hey, it's yours to lose, something would happen and I would either not, oh, well, I didn't get it. And so, you can kind of get on the little bit of a, as I call it, pity pot, where you kind of say, oh, you want to roll your lip out and go, oh, this didn't go right.
Right.
And a lot of what I really had to kind of stop and drop, and as I call it, stop, drop, and roll, and say was, is it a barrier that's there, or is, sometimes you can say, well, this was because I'd be first, or I'd be first in that job, first female. Was that the barrier, or, was it, truly I wasn't right for the job, or was it something I was doing? And, I think it's probably the advice I give different folks is probably a little bit of all the above, but the true thing, the things that you can control yourself is, what are the barriers that I put up? And that's when I started getting more feedback on myself. How was I perceived? What were my strengths? What were some of my defense mechanisms? What were things that were going? So I got an executive coach, plus, relying on some of my mentors that would really give me the true, honest feedback, not just saying, oh, it's okay, you did good,
Right.
Really tell me, but you got to be ready to take it.
Yeah.
And so I had to learn to listen to it without the response going, yeah, but.
Right.
Listen to that. And then as a result of it, I really started opening up and getting more comfortable as myself as a leader. You were asking, did you ever feel uncomfortable or whatever?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're always going to have, I think there's the things that you, in my mind, that you question, am I ready, or am I comfortable, am I the right person? But then you got to make sure it's not that, as I call it, that little thing sitting on your shoulder telling you why you're going to fail.
Right.
You've got to make sure that you've got the right things in place and you believe in yourself and cut yourself some slack.
Yeah.
And you take that honest feedback to learn, how can I take this and go forward? And as a result of it, then the doors started opening back up for me and my career started going back again. And then, like I said, then that opened up the door toward the deputy job and the center director job that I never thought was even possible. So a lot of folks, I tell them, I said, you have career aspirations of where you want to go, and it's good to think of a path, but you have to have flexibility in that path, and you have to be ready for change because things aren't going to go the way you expected. And so be open to maybe not this, but how about that?
Yeah.
And the key part of it is really, being willing and open yourself. And sometimes that's hard to let go of some of those insecurities, but it really does really make a difference. And that's a lot of what I tell folks is challenge yourself, get yourself out of your comfort zone, push yourself, but then also learn about yourself. If you really want to take the next steps as a leader, it's not just about managing people. It's about leading people. Yeah. And as one of my mentors said, if you think you're leading people and you look around, there's no one following you, you're probably just taking a walk. You need to make sure that people want to follow you, they understand to follow you, and that makes a difference.
Right. Yeah, there's a key difference between leadership and management.
Yes.
And so you were talking a little bit about the different leadership styles. If you don't mind me asking, did you figure out what your leadership style was, and I guess what sort of aspects were a part of your leadership style?
Well, there's many different. I won't push just one style, but I guess I would say there are many different things that you can do to learn your style.
Ooh, okay.
There's Myers-Briggs, there's the DISC, there's all different things that you learn about what your style, your natural style is. And it's your natural style that you are most comfortable in, and particularly in a stress or your normal thing of what you do.
Yeah.
And so if I give an example of the DISC survey style, there's the D, that's a dominant style that says you are more comfortable being directive, let's charge. Yeah. There's the I style, which is more inspirational. You kind of, if one of the examples is someone says, you come in from a meeting, they say, well, how was everybody's weekend? I think do we want to have a party? Do we want to do this? Are we planning? You're thinking out of the box. You're kind of that inspirational. There's the supportive style that basically says, how is everybody? How did you do? A little bit more consensus management. Oh. And then there's the C, the DISC, and it's more of a detail-oriented, give me the facts. And so many of the times when you're in a meeting and you see someone says, well, let's get down to business. And it's learning your style and other people's style, so you learn to communicate. And so you kind of learn how somebody receives and how somebody wants to be talked to.
Yeah.
So I'm a supportive.
Okay.
After I went through that long ramble.
Yeah, no, you're good.
That's the style of an S. Okay. Is to be supportive that says, and I've got some C in me, which says, let me give you a little detail, but you want to be supportive. You want everybody to understand what's going on. You want consensus management. You like to make sure people are happy. Yeah. And you like to, talk through a decision. Well, as a leader, what I had to learn was it's okay to be that style. I don't always have to be, let's go get it done. Right. But there's times when you have to make a decision, so you have to be able to do situational leadership and do the let's get it done. Oh, I see. So I had to learn with my consensus management, it's okay to get the idea, but then at some point in time, you got to make a decision and move forward. Yeah. Also, you can't always make everyone happy. Right. Also, there's things that, you just got to learn to do, be more concise. So there's things that, it's okay with your style, because there's not one style that's wrong. Right. It's your natural style, but it's learning how to understand your style and how to, in meetings, when you've got to make a decision or you're working with other folks or someone says something, you kind of go, ouch, that stung me. To kind of have positive intent and go, well, that's their leadership style or that's their personality style, not necessarily attacking me. And so that goes a long way when when everything's happy and everything's going great, it's easy to have the good style. But then when things get tight and people go their natural style, sometimes those styles can be conflict. Yeah. And people can take it personal when it's not meant to be personal. So that's one of the things that to me is just really insightful that, and once you learn that, then you can kind of talk to someone and they'll say, hey, Jody, you'll be over here with Mom, your mom and me. Or someone will say, well, you're being a little too direct, or okay, we're not talking about that. Let's get back to the decision we've got to make. Or if someone's given, they're saying your precision's outweighing your accuracy. Yeah. You're getting too detailed on me. You kind of have a way of talking through it. So so that's kind of the kind of a little bit of the fun part of it. And there's many different courses and classes that you can take that help you with the situational leadership. And it really makes it fun when you start seeing things. You go, oh, wow. Yeah. I see, the light bulb goes off. Right. Yeah, I've heard about the situational leadership of being able to adapt to the different types of situations that you may come up upon, because there may be an instance where, like you said, it may be a hard time and everybody's natural tendency comes out, and you're going to have to be able to adapt to that situation to be able to take control of the room and be able to, get everybody on the same page. That's a lot. Because no one wants to be in a meeting for forever. Oh, my gosh, yeah, you want to make decisions, so there's a lot of that you really, and it's, I like to say it's like having a toolkit. You don't always use your hammer when you need a screwdriver. You can, but it's not the right tool. So it's learning as a project manager or as a leader. You learn best tool to use for the right application so that you get the best out of it. And it's the toolkit that serves you for life and, helps develop. Yeah, it kind of still seems like it fits along that sort of systems approach. I guess I never would have, because I'm a communication arts major, and so I guess I never would have thought of that, of like the sort of systems thinking. I think that's so interesting to be able to take that sort of approach, of that technical approach to, or that technical thinking, systems thinking, to communication with other individuals. Absolutely, as center director and even before, saved me of We have many excellent technical folks that know exactly about the precision of that system or that piece of hardware or that vehicle. However, many of the times when we're trying to tell the story, whether we're trying to talk to our stakeholders or the public or telling the why, I had to rely heavily on my communication specialists to sit down and say, okay, this is how you need to tell the story. You need to tell the story. And as one of my folks said, I asked you what time it was. I didn't ask you how to build the clock. Ooh. And so you got to make sure that the audience you're talking to, you answer what is important to them. Why are you doing this? Why are you spending the money on this? Why do we need to do it? What's the urgency? Having the communication and the ability to tell the story and to tell the story at the right level for the audience.
Right.
And then, when you've got to go in the flight ratings reviews and you've got to get down into the detail and tell the story in a small amount of time.
Yeah.
It's important. So that's where, again, every team member on my team, no matter where they were, from facilities to support to engineers to you name it, they're a critical part of being a value member of being able to tell the story because, again, if we can't tell the story, we won't get support.
Wow.
You don't get funding.
Right.
You have no funding, you don't do projects. So there's a lot of being able to, like I said, tell that whole complete story. So, team members are, a part of making it all work.
Yeah. I guess, was it ever not difficult per se, but what was it like being able to translate the information that you had to the stakeholders, to the individuals that you were trying to communicate, like you said, the why behind it? What was it like?
I admit it was one of the things that was a little scary to me. And it was one of the things that I had to go and say to the experts that were there. Help me tell the story. You're the expert. Help me. And so I intentionally sought out help from numerous folks that took me under their wing and helped me do it. And then as a result of it, you see success when a stakeholder goes, thank you. I needed that. That's exactly what I needed. I understand now. Or you're speaking to a public and someone says, I understand now what you were trying to tell me and why it matters. And that's just because nothing's more frustrating, when you're trying to tell a story that you're so passionate about.
Right.
And they're looking at you like, I have no idea what you're talking about.
Right.
You're not making any sense. And then you go, okay, I'm not telling it right. I'm not telling it in the right way. And having someone help you polish and do that is so, it's just rewarding. It's fulfilling. I mean, it really is, because you think about it, to yourself, to other folks, we're always selling ourselves. What are you doing to make that connection?
That's so cool to hear about. Like you said, even in our own selves, we are sort of selling ourselves and being able to communicate the why in our own selves. Yeah, exactly.
But does somebody else understand why?
Right.
And particularly with NASA, we took a lot of criticism on, well, we don't really know what NASA's doing. Why are you doing it? Why should NASA matter?
Yeah.
And we took criticism on, well, you're not telling your story. You're not telling the benefits to society. You're not telling the key of this is a leadership issue. This is how we work with other countries. This is how we are viewed as a leader in space exploration, and this is the why. So we have been spending a lot of time being able to tell that story better. And, why are we doing what we're doing? It makes a difference.
Now, I know that you mentioned earlier that you said that you had a position of deputy manager. Yes. Would you mind telling me a little bit about what that specific title means? Because I know that I'm a little bit of an outsider when it comes to all of that. So I'm really interested to hear about the differentiation between that sort of title.
Well, it's like being the boss.
Okay.
Or the deputy to the boss. So you're a partner.
Okay.
With the program manager or the center director or whatever.
Yeah.
So you're second in command.
Oh, okay, got you.
And so you work hand in hand with the leader.
Yeah.
And, you bring both your leadership skills, and there may be things, a lot of times, most time, the deputy has a tendency, as I call it, to work down and in, which is you're working on the organization, you're working on communication, you're working on the things that you have to do to hit the cadence to deliver. A lot of times the boss is more working up and out with their stakeholders, so they have to be up and out and they have bosses too.
Right.
So you're kind of focused on, the different things that make the organization run and make you deliver on your mission. And so there's, different roles and responsibilities.
Yeah.
And, so yes, you're a partner.
Yeah.
But then it makes a difference being the one selected to be in charge. And,
Wow.
You're responsible. So that's really, really the difference.
Yeah.
I've been very blessed with the managers that I had and that we've worked hand in hand as partners. But, it truly comes down to being selected and anointed as the boss.
Wow. That's so interesting. Like you said, there
Or
is that.
the leader. I really like to say the leader versus the boss. Because
Yeah.
boss says, okay, I'm in power. And I like to say if you're in leadership and you're there for power or pennies or prestige or position, you're in for the wrong reasons. It really needs to be people and your passion.
Oh, I love that.
So to me, it's being a leader and being recognized that you're the one in charge.
Yeah, I love that. I like the differentiation that you said between leadership and just being the boss. And like you said also, that sort of differentiation between the two types of leaders in that situation as the deputy and as the project director, of being able to focus on the different things, like you said, of focusing on the specific mission instead of, focusing on the stakeholders. That's so interesting, of that sort of role differentiation. So I love hearing about that.
And both of them, again, go back to the systems thinking.
Yeah, you're right.
As someone always used to say, one of my mentors said, I asked you to get the job done. I didn't tell you had to do it specifically. So that's, again, one of the things that you learn. If you're trying to do everyone else's job, then you're not sending the right, and plus you'll wear yourself out.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
So you can't do everybody's job. You need to be doing your job as the leader of the organization and enabling others to do their jobs so that you can do it. So, that's really, again, the importance. And, a visual I had one time is someone said, well, think of all the plates spinning. If you're sitting there spinning a plate yourself, then you're not being the leader. You need to be backing up so that you're seeing all these plates spinning and seeing which one's starting to wobble, so that you can look, versus you're so focused on one thing that you're missing the big picture. Think of that as you're the whole ecosystem making it work.
Oh, I love that sort of analogy, like you said. That's so just interesting. I'm like totally geeking out right now about all of this. Just the way that it in fact still can be that sort of systems thinking, like you were saying. I guess I never would have thought about systems thinking being in so many different types of places in an organization.
And it's absolutely. I mean, you can get so focused on what you're doing that you miss.
Yeah.
You might have your widget or your area perfect, but if that doesn't fit into the big picture and is not going in the right direction, it's not part of the unified team. And that's, again, the things that work with individuals on is learning your system, but then learning how your system fits with other systems and the interaction. Yeah. And many of the times it helps you make a decision when you say, well, this is right for me. Well, it might not be right for the team.
Exactly.
And so there's give and take of what's the right going forward. And it helps you when you can have that different perspective.
Yeah.
It lets you kind of see that, it's not a win-lose. Many of the time it's a compromise for what's best.
Wow. That is something that is extremely important in those sort of team environments, of being able to find that best solution for everyone instead of focusing on oneself. And like we were talking earlier about letting that ego go personally and being able to focus on that big picture.
Right.
That's so incredibly important. And so we've talked a little bit about your experience as the deputy for different for
different programs.
Yeah, different programs. There we go.
Yeah.
Yes, there we go. So why don't you tell me a little bit about your experience as the director of the Marshall Space Flight Center? I guess, what was that sort of day-to-day like? If you don't mind me asking.
The first thing I would tell you is it was fantastic. It was, I can just still reflect back on it, and I miss it today, even retired. But I was going to say, it's wonderful when you get to see all the wonderful people and great leaders and amazing technical folks and communicators that you work with.
Yeah.
It's just mind-blowing when you see what the team does. And having at Marshall particularly to work on large propulsion systems and to work with things that we had assigned to us, like the Space Launch System, Artemis, the mission going forward that we delivered in 2022, the first test flight, and knowing that you've got the next one will be with humans.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Having that, returning persons to the moon that we haven't been in over 50 years, including the first woman.
Oh, my gosh.
And person of color.
Wow.
Doing a lot of the first, human landing systems, working on the science missions, supporting International Space Station, where you're doing the research and learning how to live and work in space that's paying forward.
Yeah.
So being center director and being responsible and seeing all the different areas of Marshall Space Flight Center, as well as the new technology, the nuclear propulsion activity, the different things that's on the cutting edge of what we've got to do to go forward.
Yeah.
And working with a lot of our commercial partners and having that experience and learning how to have that partnership. It is just one of those dreams come true of seeing things. And it's not just about Marshall Space Flight Center. It's the whole NASA community, many centers that we work with. There's over 12 centers that you work with, and as well as your commercial partners, your international partners, industry partners. So it's a big ecosystem. Exploration is worldwide.
Yeah.
And being a part of, doing the things that are supposed to be impossible, as we say, doing the impossible is really cool. So, like I said, being part of the center director, it's more than just about yourself. It's about what we're doing, what we're accomplishing, and seeing how we really affect not only today but the future, and hopefully inspiring the next generation of scientists and engineers and communicators and business folks and everything that want to be part of keeping that progress going forward. Is part of it too, because that's a lot of fun too. That's where you kind of get your B12 shot is being able to talk to young folks and inspiring them to follow in maybe not my footsteps, but other footsteps that says, hey, you can be a part of this too. Yeah. And that's just really, it was a blast. No pun intended.
Oh my gosh, really I love it. I love all the space puns.
Out of this world,
Beautiful. I love it. Okay, so what was it like specifically being a woman in a heavy male-dominated field?
Well, as I say, there's fun times. Most all the times I had mentors, male and female, that were great. And one of the things that I had to learn of being unique as a female was that many of the times when there were things that happened that you kind of did, as I call it, an ouch moment, that you really had to not take it personal. A lot of it was learning to operate with women in the world. And a lot of that happened more in my earlier career than in my later career. But, I think there's things that, all women kind of deal with is where you're in a room and you say something. And 5 seconds later or a minute later, there's a male that speaks up and repeats and says just exactly what you said. And you want to go, I just said that.
Oh, my gosh.
So to me, there's things like that. And that's teamwork with other women where when you find, or other men in the room, that they find that, you're getting stepped over, or it could be someone that doesn't speak up very much and you hear them speak up, you're standing up for them, or you help someone have their voice heard.
Yeah.
And so that's important. And so, you learn to do that. But like I said, in my earlier career, I have a few funnies, that kind of happened.
Do tell.
Well, there's one time when early in my career where we were taking some diversity and inclusion training.
Yeah.
And this was way back in the government. This was back in the 1990s when a lot of, women in the workforce in the engineering roles, NASA, Marshall Space Flight Center, had always had some very strong women that were my mentors.
Yeah.
But really having a large majority of women in the workforce and what it brings with a lot of the women still responsible for a lot of the child care and things like that. So there was diversity and inclusion of how the opportunities for women were coming about.
Yeah.
And so the diversity and inclusion training I was in, I happened to be about 8 months pregnant with my son. And I was in the training, and they were talking about women in the workforce and different things and, the difference of women in the workforce. And sometimes it was the behaviors of different expressions, people would say.
Right.
And a gentleman stood up and said, looked at me, and, you know, I was obviously expecting, and he said, that's why you don't hire women, because they get like that. And, you know, I didn't know at first what to say, and another gentleman in the room said, well, hey, that doesn't mean she's gone. You know, she's just expecting a child,
Right.
and she will be back. And the gentleman was just, you know, really worried about hiring women, that he was afraid that he would invest time and there wouldn't, you know, be there.
Right.
And when I started reflecting back on that and talking to some of the other women from NASA in the past, there was some horror stories of a woman would go out on maternity leave and she'd get processed out. So the other women had to make sure that they knew she will return, because it was kind of the exception to the rule sometimes. So it was a real adjustment back in the early 90s that women would go out and come back and still have a career and
Wow.
balance. You know, there are other things that I've done where, you know, people were just, they were on launch countdown. They were very aware of their majority, 95% were men.
Yeah.
And one time I needed to go to the restroom, and so I couldn't find a restroom close to where we were in countdown to be able for me to go to the restroom and get back on console. So as a result, I had to go way down the hall, and I got locked out. So I had to call and ask them, can you get me back on? You know, I had to go to the restroom.
Oh my gosh.
And it wasn't anything that somebody was doing, you know, intentionally. It was just, as they call, you know, unconscious bias, where there's things that you didn't understand, you didn't know.
Right.
But the only thing it took was, you know, pointing it out, more women. And the correction, you know, things got corrected. But,
Right.
But you did have to have your, you know, a little bit of a sense of humor with it.
Right.
And know that someone didn't intentionally do something.
Right.
But you know, like you said, you just kind of learned it. And there was nothing wrong with saying, hey, I'm a girl here, you know.
Right.
I'm a little different. But then in the same vein, one of the things I really tried to do to I won't say to fit in the men's world, but was also understand that, you know, they were learning me too. And so I tried very hard to be as, you know, I guess let's say professional, fit in.
Yeah.
You know, how I dressed, what I did.
Right.
I tried to make sure that it was easy to accept me. But then also later on in life had to learn to be myself, and also that it was okay to be feminine and be in many different ways to be yourself. So, you know, there's always the balance. It's, you know, anytime you're trying to find a new situation or you're new to something, it is always good to kind of find out the environment, understand it. If there's something going wrong, you know, point it out.
Right.
But then it's also learning how to point out, you know, when something is, you know, like I say, you have that ouch moment.
Yeah.
Because most people do not intentionally mean to do anything, but it's really quite humorous now when I think about different things like that, and you just kind of go, wow, you know, had to kind of be a little tough.
Yeah, I guess. What advice do you have about being confident in speaking up? Because I know that sort of being in that situation of not having many other women around you to be able to back you up on. How are you able to find that confidence to speak up?
And it really is. It really is when you're worried about what impression is this going to leave. You know, there is how does this hurt my career? How does this...
Right.
So, you know, to say that those fears don't exist is not true. But, you know, it's with any subject. But I was going to say, I think in particular, it's to me, number one, as a leader, when I became a leader, was... if there's something that's happened unsafe or there's discrimination or someone's feeling threatened, it's no ifs, ands, or buts.
Right.
Speak up, you know, because that is not right. You know, if there's personal safety, you've got to speak up.
Yeah.
However, I think when there are things that are, like I say, unintended behaviors or lack of awareness behaviors,
Right.
I think it is important to, you know, to say that. And many of the ways that I learned how to do it was when someone would say something, I'd say, ouch. Ooh. And they'd go, oh, what's wrong? And I'd say, I'm not quite sure I understood what you said or what you meant. And so it would give an opportunity to, why did you say ouch? And it kind of led us into having the discussion of an unintended comment, unintended bias that happened.
Yeah.
And, and also, and no matter what, as an employee, you always have the right, or as a student, to go talk to a teacher, a professor, a boss, and point out behavior. You don't have to take it on your own.
Yeah.
And say, this is what's happening. And I think it's how you approach it. But then there's the willingness to say, first time it was unintentional.
Yeah.
Second time it might be unintentional. Third time, there's a repeat pattern here that we need to have, a timeout and stop. So I think it's understanding that, but then I think it's also not getting emotionally offended by it. You can be offended by the action or offended by the comment, but you have to make sure how you approach it. You don't make it or let it turn into about your reaction. It's more, this is the thing that we're trying to work on.
Right.
Not my behavior or not my reaction. Let's make that the subject that we want to tackle.
Right, exactly. Because I know that in those sort of situations, it can be easy to let the emotions take control and to be sort of hurt and that ego sort of get in the way. But in order to make that progress, in order to be able to solve that solution, it's important for both parties to be able to separate that emotion from the problem solving.
And usually, as we kind of call it, short accounts.
Oh.
It's the ability to say, ouch, I didn't, that hurt. And so to me, I think the more you do it in a one-on-one situation versus singling it out in a crowd,
right,
I think that helps everyone from becoming, defensive about it or feeling like they've been put on the spot. And so I think that also is important, because anytime I've ever gone to someone and said, I know this was not what you meant, but this is how I heard it or what I felt, it has definitely been a very good discussion.
Yeah.
And the same thing when someone has pointed it out to me.
Yeah.
It was, ouch, wow, that is not the way it was intended. And, I think that goes a long way. But it does take courage to say ouch.
Yeah.
Because if you just keep bearing it, then, it starts being, as I'd call it, a scar.
Yeah.
That you kind of carry with you. And that's not baggage you want to take.
Exactly. You were saying that specifically a lot of innovation's happening. So in your position as the Marshall Space Flight Director, how do you think you were able to stay innovative? That's a deep question, but
well, it really is, because sometimes the mantra behind NASA was, failure's not an option. Well, failure is an option. It's where you fail, and so the key is we want to be on the leading edge of technology and processes and all of that. So we want to do the things, because if it's already common knowledge it can be done, then NASA shouldn't be doing it.
Right.
We need to be staying and helping our nation invest in what it takes to be on the leading edge. And so that's working with academia. That is pushing ourselves and finding the things, just like on the human landing system today. There are things that we're working with our commercial partners on so that they can travel deeper into space, so that they can take propellant, so that they can do propellant loading.
Yeah.
There's things that are true technology gaps that we have to be able to do for that mission to be successful. And our ultimate goal is to go to Mars, take humans to Mars. Well, a lot of the technology that we can be 250 miles out doesn't work 250,000 miles out at the moon. And when you go 250 million miles out, it's like thinking of the technology that you can't just turn around and go back to Earth and get it or bring your supplies. You have to be able to do that. So a lot of the additive manufacturing systems that we need to be able to survive. And so being able to talk through that and talk to your engineers and talk to the different academia and talk about the things that we need help with to do is really inspirational. And then also, again, it goes back to talking to the stakeholders, being able to tell the why, because it takes funding.
Mm-hmm.
It takes funding, it takes support, and they have to see and understand the why.
Right.
So it's one big system making it happen, but it really truly is the inspiration and the how we inspire people to think out of the box.
Yeah.
I mean, we do things now that 50 years ago we would not have thought was possible.
Right.
And the same thing. So it's keeping that inspiration going and how you do it.
Yeah.
You know, we may be doing some of the same things, but how you do it is different. You know, when you think about the AI,
Yeah.
a lot of the stuff that we're doing, make it more efficient and push people so that you're spending more time on innovation versus manually getting it done. So
Yeah.
there's just a lot of that's inspiration, and it's really, like I said, getting people around each other to inspire each other, to feed off of each other, and you know, and making sure that some of us that were a little older weren't the naysayers going, "Nah, we've already tried that." You know, it is really important to keep folks inspired and let the brainstorming, let the out-of-the-box thinking happen. If we don't have time for that and don't make time for that, then we will lose, you know, the inspiration, you know, the innovation, the inspiration.
Right. Wow. Like you're specifically saying that being able to be open to the sort of creative thinking and the brainstorming. A lot of the stuff that we've been highlighting, I know that you've mentioned STEM a lot. We kind of talk a little bit about STEAM too, but it kind of sounds like it is creative in a way of being able to not only use analytical thinking and systems thinking, but being able to be creative in those sort of approaches of talking with the stakeholders, giving that why. That's something that I've heard a lot in a lot of my English classes growing up of you need to tell the why.
Yeah, the why, and you know, and that's important.
Yeah.
And not telling people always the how.
Right.
This is what we're trying to do. Let's find ways to get there, you know, and I think that's so really critical, really critical.
Well, yeah, exactly. That sort of creativity. And I guess what other aspects do you think of your positions have like allowed you to be creative? Do you think your positions have been creative?
Well, I was going to say every day when you kind of when I reflect back on,
Yeah.
you know, day-to-day life as a center director, it's like every day is a new day. You know, you may have come into work thinking this is what's on my calendar and what I'm going to do, but there are always new options, different challenges that pushed you to think out of the box, you know, and I think that's good. Every day was not ordinary, you know, which sometimes can be, you know, a little strenuous and wear you out. You get tired. But again, that goes back to having a team that you take on the pressure together and you work to the innovation. And I do think the outreach that we do, you know, the different challenges that I saw NASA doing to try to say bring your best, your brightest ideas. Also, a lot of the internships, the different things that we do with mini academia and giving hands-on experience. Just that infusion of new people, new voices, new way approaches, and then working back with the academia to say these are the things that we need, and you know, having that interaction truly kind of feeds on each other and keeps you, you know, I think keeps you fresh. And we just got to make sure we don't get stale and don't get complacent.
Right. You were specifically talking a bit about outreach and stuff. Would you mind talking a little bit about the outreach that has been at the Marshall Space Flight Center during your time as director?
Well, absolutely. We do a lot of outreach, you know, from even having NASA Days in the park to try to have family days and try to show what's out there, but then also visiting and talking to many schools, to the cyber school, to underprivileged schools, HBCUs, trying to work through what it takes to inspire people to see that they too have an option, no matter you don't have to be in the top of the schools. You know, there are many schools, many areas that people can be a part of. And to me, that outreach and showing the art of the possibility is really, really important. And then, you know, being involved in things that I had opportunity to go do, you know, being on the Today Show and Girls Who Launch, you know, Women Who Launch, doing things that, you know, you're really showing the fun that you have and the inspiration you have, and doing that outreach and talking to many different groups, you know, to encourage the importance of space and what we get from it, you know, I think is really good, kind of being, as I like to say, an ambassador of telling the story. And you know, it's just amazing when you have, I have someone that's young, you know, especially a young female that'll come up and just hug and say, I'm going to get your job in, you know, in 20 years. And I'll kind of look at them and go, well, I may be a little bit older than 20 years from now, but I was going to say, yes, I want you to have
Yeah.
it. But yes, you can go do this. You can have this job. And that's, that's to me what's paying it forward, making a difference.
I love that. That's going to make me emotional and stuff. That's just so sweet.
The Space and Rocket Center is definitely a welcome center for the Marshall Space Flight Center. So we work hand in hand and have the STEAM and STEM activities, the research activities. And so the Space and Rocket Center is a very critical partner to NASA, and Space Camp is many of our employees have attended Space Camp and are part of it. And they say that's what led me to go forward or become an astronaut and the career I've taken. So, yes, even though it's a different organization, we work hand in hand. And, again, through them, the inspiration. And we work with them, too, on outreach activities, the STEM activities, the rover challenges, the launch initiatives, the different things that we work hand in hand. And they are a great partner as well as a lot of our industry partners and the community colleges, and working hand in hand to be able to keep that momentum going. So, yes, a great partner.
Yeah, being able to have those partnerships, like you said, with the different organizations across the U.S., of being able to work together for that same common goal of continuing innovation. That's extremely interesting. And I'm guessing that you had to have experience being able, as the director of the Marshall Space Flight Center, of being able to interact with the other leaders of those other organizations.
Absolutely. And I will say, as center director, I'm blessed to be in Alabama, and because we get a lot of support from a lot of folks. And then in the Huntsville area, being in Rocket City, our Huntsville mayor and chamber and the Madison mayor, and I'm just talking that whole area is very blessed and supported. Not all centers, Marshall, or not all NASA centers get the same support we did. So, that is part of having the community that enables it, because folks go to work, but they also have to live in the area. So having the right economic situation, the environment, job opportunities, our commercial partners, having all that ability to work together is another thing that makes and will keep Marshall and NASA strong. But also, it's great for Alabama, and it's great for the Huntsville area. And we couldn't ask for more help, from the chamber and the different sponsorships that we get.
Yeah, exactly.
So I got to put a plug in for them too.
Oh, for sure. A huge shout out to them.
It's a lot of help in this area, and we're very blessed in this area.
Yeah, definitely. Like you said, even the name Rocket City is like synonymous with the Huntsville area, and especially being a part of the Marshall Space Flight Center and that sort of Rocket City, that outreach is already sort of ingrained in that sort of Huntsville culture.
Absolutely.
And so that's extremely amazing.
I would say, like, from I think the key perspective of Marshall Space Flight Center is understanding that Marshall has a role with NASA, and that our identity as Marshall Space Flight Center is definitely being able to do the propulsion systems that get you into space, being able to do the human landing systems that get you down to a planet, including the moon and Mars, the advanced systems that are transportation systems that we'll be developing that gets you deeper into space, and the life support systems that are all critical for human exploration. Marshall does many other things, but that's a lot of our key expertise, and as well as the advanced manufacturing. So to me, the things that Marshall are experts in are the key that are a huge difference in space exploration, and will continue to be. And it's one of the things as center director that you make sure that you are always looking forward, that you're delivering on your missions, but that you're also looking at the innovation and what it takes to be on the leading edge, so that you stay relevant to space and what we're doing in our mission, as well as the partnerships we bring. So there's, a lot of things from a center director that's always on your list, and obviously it's developing the people. Making sure that the workforce and the infrastructure that you have to do those things that attract people to want to work with you are critical. And so there's, like I said, it's more than just having missions. It's making sure that you're keeping those roles and responsibilities and what it takes to execute the job. and that people want to work with you.
Yeah.
Staying relevant is really critical.
Yeah. Definitely being able to stay relevant, because I know that, you know, UAH right here, it's a pretty big primary engineering school.
Absolutely.
And I know a lot of young women actually who are in those sort of programs of industrial engineering and aerospace engineering, a lot of young women interested in those fields and being go-getters.
Yes, and absolutely. I can point to so many women at Marshall Space Flight Center that are graduates of UAH,
Yeah.
as well as, multiple universities in the area. And it
Yeah.
is, it's really neat to see how you can not only graduate from UAH, but then also, be in your hometown and get a great career choice. Marshall Space Flight Center, I think last I looked, we have, I think it's 40% of our workforce are either UAH grads or University of Alabama or Auburn graduates, as well as many others. But there's a high percentage of UAH alumni.
Yeah.
Example, John Honeycutt, who is the Space Launch System Program Manager.
Wow.
Lisa Watson Morgan, who is the Human Landing System's first program manager and first female program manager. So there's a lot of first
Whoa.
that UAH should be very proud of.
Yeah, that just hearing the names of those titles and just the specifics of what they do, that blows my mind. Like all the stuff that Marshall Space Flight Center has done regarding, like you said, being able to propel the rocket into space and being able to land correctly with the human landing systems. That's just so, like you said, just the innovation is just so exciting, and I can totally understand why people are interested in being a part of that NASA culture at specifically Marshall Space Flight Center. So that's just so awesome to hear.
And we need more engineers to keep growing. So he's got a lot, like I said, a lot of propulsion technology, nuclear propulsion, things we've got to have.
Yeah.
That if we're going to go to Mars with humans
Yeah.
and be able to survive going to Mars with humans, we have to have that advanced technology and propulsion.
So, Miss Singer, we talked a little bit about leadership and being able to be a good leader. I guess what sort of advice do you have for individuals who are interested in leadership roles, and specifically, but not limited to, women?
Right. That are interested in leadership?
Yes.
Okay. So I was going to say, first off, as I'd said before, when from a leadership standpoint, go into leadership for the right reasons. Make it sure that it is definitely that you want to lead people and you're passionate about it, that it's not just looking for the position or the pennies or the prestige.
Yeah.
Because you got to go in with the right heart, because leadership is hard.
Yeah.
But I think keys to leadership is definitely developing yourself, pushing yourself to be the best leader you can be, which is investing in yourself, understanding about yourself, understanding how you lead and be a authentic leader, one that you really truly are true to yourself, and so you understand your style, and then you understand your style on others, and then learning how to take your strengths and weaknesses and turn yourself into a balanced leader based on the team. So there's many things that you can do. A lot of it is the life of hard knocks. There's many times if someone starts out, you don't have to start out as someone says, you crawl, you walk, then you run.
Right.
Take the steps to learn to lead teams, to be able to lead. And some of the hardest things you can do is leading a team that you're not the supervisor of. You are definitely then an influential leader.
Wow.
So a lot of times when people say they want to lead, I'd ask them to go volunteer to lead a group that they're not a boss of, because that is teaching them to learn how to lead with influence, how to be a key contributor and enable. And even if it's maybe not some work thing, I was put into things where I had to lead, for example, safety day at Marshall Space Flight Center. Even though I was in shuttle propulsion, there were things that they gave you stretch assignments.
Yeah.
And really that's learning. Again, it's learning to value people, work as a team, and value it. And to me, those are things that are good to be a leader, and and then always getting that feedback.
Yeah.
And not being afraid of the feedback or defensive with the feedback.
Wow. Those are all just really great points. I know that it definitely is difficult sometimes when getting feedback, because I know that it's easy to be like, oh, yes, give me the feedback. I want to know. But being able to, in that moment, separate that emotion from that logic of being like, okay, I actually need to work on this stuff is extremely important. And like you said, it is a great leadership quality.
Right, it is. And then being able to then grow from that
Yeah.
and use it going forward.
Right.
And, and then admitting,
Yeah.
I'm not going to be perfect.
Oh.
But I'm going to try my best.
Oh, that hit hard right there. It's that sort of, like you said, that sort of ego getting in the way of being able to be like, it has to be perfect. It has to be perfect. But being able to be real with yourself.
Well, and it's being real with yourself, and it's also that transparency with other folks.
Yeah.
If people can see who you are, see what you're made of, understand your decisions, and see that trust, respect, that goes a long way, because then people understand.
Right.
And it's not as intimidating.
Yeah. Wow. That's just a great perspective. I guess if an individual is interested specifically in going into engineering, but is not exactly sure which field, or if they're debating between engineering and another field, what would you say to convince them to pursue engineering?
Well, first off, I would say, hey, engineering is great. I love it.
Yeah.
I'm a testimonial. There's many things of why engineering is great, because it opens up so many doors.
Mm-hmm.
But I would tell them, find what is right for you. Do what I did. Even though it wasn't my idea and it was my mom's idea that said, go shadow folks.
The motherly wisdom.
And, I let all the time different folks that were in high school and in college come and shadow me for a day. Not only as center director, but in other roles.
Yeah.
And I really took them through, hey, this, as I call it, the good, the bad, the ugly. Hey, not every day is fun. Not every day do you not, you sit in meetings. There's all kind of things that you do. But basically, here's what a day in the life of.
Yeah.
And let them kind of see and ask questions. And, of course, I don't try to just stress them out sitting in a meeting all day. I try to give them some fun things, too.
Right.
But let them kind of experience it and listen to what their likes and their dislikes and why they'd want to do it.
Right.
And I encourage them, just go take a chance, because many of the times as I've gone through my career or made choices, I didn't necessarily know exactly what I wanted to do, but many of the times, based on the exposure or what I'd seen, I found out what I didn't want to do. And that helped open up some doors that says, I might not want to do this, but I think I'd like to do this, or how about that? So many of the time, that just helps you make an informed decision, because I even see, as we're going along, there are more and more different curriculums and professions and things that didn't exist when I was picking a career that now have evolved, and it becomes opportunities of, this is how you can take this career and morph it based on the situation today.
Yeah.
Or you can do this with it, because many of the times getting your foot in the door with an engineering degree that opens up many doors enables you to do many different things. Right now, I don't solve differential equations. I wasn't,
Right.
As I became higher in the management cycle, you were relying on more of your skills, your soft skills, your management skills. So again, it kind of goes back to, learn what makes you tick, what inspires you, and then go from there and see what doors it opens. Because most companies and organizations, when you come on new, they usually are going to invest in you and train you with what they need from you. Your education starts the process, and then you develop from there and be open-minded to different opportunities and different jobs that can take you in many different directions.
Right. And that's very interesting that you mentioned about job shadowing. I know that actually UAH, I believe, they have experience, or they have opportunities for students to job shadow. And so this is a great opportunity to plug that again, of get that experience with job shadowing, because that is extremely important.
And another great opportunity that's, coming along is, there's the Van Braun Symposium
Oh.
that's hosted at UAH, and there's opportunity for students to go and be a part of that and attend and see the different discussions that are going on through senior leaders that are presenting information. So there's opportunities throughout the community to see different opportunities and take part in different events that then gives you exposure to the art of the possibility.
Yeah.
And I think that's, and I have never known that I've never seen anyone turn down a student that says, I would like to come shadow, or will you talk to me? All of us are always willing to say, you got to pick your own route, but these are the things and the why, because even folks that are in same jobs had different pathways to getting there.
Oh, I see.
And so there's not one exact pathway, which for me turned out to be great, because if I'd traveled the path that everybody else did, I wouldn't be where I was today.
Right. And so being open to change, like you were saying,
Open to
that's
change,
a big factor.
exposure, being inquisitive, talking to folks, finding the different routes. That's really what I would encourage them, and see if it's really for you.
Yeah.
And I know different folks that have gone and changed careers, and that's okay too.
Right. That's one of the lessons that was brought up in another episode of being able to pivot. That is one of the biggest attributes of being a successful person, is being able to take the information that you're given, and instead of being stuck on the, oh gosh, it's changing, I don't want to change, because believe me, we all have our moments sometimes.
Absolutely. You want to hang in there and don't give up. But however, it's also courage to be able to say, this is not right for me, because life is too short to be miserable in life or in a career that you don't inspire to be a part of.
Exactly. And I guess if people are sort of interested, I know we mentioned job shadowing, but let's say that it might be a young high schooler as well. Is that also an opportunity for young high schoolers of job shadowing, or what other sort of advice do you recommend giving to people that age?
Yeah, I would say the same thing. We have, I can speak for NASA, and I know there's many industry partners as well as like the National Space Club that do a lot of outreach activities to high schools and universities and grammar schools and across the board. So I'd say there's, those type of things to be able to look and see what's going on in the Huntsville area and just participate in it. To me, there are so many opportunities. It's just really getting online and finding it. I mean, and I'm sure UAH has things that are going on. I know Calhoun has things that's going on.
Right.
A lot of opportunities. Space and Rocket Center.
Yeah.
Even NASA has the website. So there's many different things and places to be able to look and see what's going on in the community.
Yeah.
And just be a part of it. Don't be afraid to be a part of it. And there's many of times, like I said, many schools will ask NASA folks and other folks to come and talk to their classes.
Right.
And that's a lot of fun too.
Oh, that just sounds so exciting to be able to experience. And so a few more questions before we finish. But I know we talked a little bit about...
And there's internship programs. That reminded me, there's internship programs that high schoolers also can be a part of. Some are interns.
Oh, that's really interesting to hear about.
And you can go online and find that too. So.
Do that. Apply. And so I know we talked a little bit earlier about being able to be comfortable with yourself and being able to deal with that sort of imposter syndrome. I guess, what advice do you have for people who may be experiencing that for maybe the first, second, third, however many time?
I would think that, in my opinion, what helped me was definitely mentors and coaches, or if you can, an executive assistant. But usually, I'm not executive coach.
Yeah.
That helps you understand why you're feeling the way you do. To me, that counseling is very helpful because it helps you. Is it some experience? Is it some insecurity? Is it something that you're feeling yourself? That why you feel an imposter. What is making you feel uncomfortable? And I think, being able to have that discussion, and many times having that discussion with peers and, folks that you just talk to and say, you ever feel this way? Someone that a good friend or a peer or mentor.
Yeah.
And to me, having that open discussion helps you sometimes when you talk about it versus having that, as I call it, the inward conversation with yourself. You kind of get in a do loop. And I think having that opportunity is very helpful. And there's, like I said, there's many women that volunteer to be mentors that you can sign up for that are glad to, as I call it, do match.com, where you can go online and through recognized programs, to be a mentor. There's things like that help. But I definitely think from an imposter syndrome, I think it really is, like I said, getting the help, but it is also asking yourself why, what is it? What is it I'm feeling uncomfortable about? And is it, just being afraid of a challenge, of something that scares you? Ooh. Or is it something that, truly is a barrier that you're having to, to go against?
Yeah.
And I would say, in at the college, there's counselors, high school, there's counselors. There's all kind of things that, depending on the situation, to me, is being able to get that help and talk to folks, talk to parents, talk to, someone that you respect, kind of just get a feel for what's going on.
Oh, I love that. I think that's extremely great advice. And so if an individual say that they've already sort of been established in their career, because I'm trying to get it from all sorts of situations. If an individual has been sort of established in a certain career, but then, like you said, kind of realizes, oh, maybe this isn't for me anymore. I guess what sort of advice do you have for them to be able to be open-minded and pivot, per se, after it's already been so established in this certain career or routine or whatnot?
In my mind, most organizations, companies around, if I know from NASA, but I know our industry partners as well, they all have different, as I'd say, help activities, help groups, different organizations or counseling or the HR department, human resources. There's different things that you can look and talk about potential careers. And I would say, too, many of the times when I was, I guess I'd say, feeling a little stuck or trapped or a little like I kind of was in neutral in my career, going and talking to my boss, or even if I didn't feel comfortable with my boss's boss. There was always folks that you could go and talk to and say, I'd like to do more. I've been working in this job. I like it. I like the people. However, I would like to do more. There are things, and sometimes it's learning how to approach and ask those questions and putting yourself out there with folks that said, I'd like to do something different. Don't be afraid to do that. And that makes a big difference in people then knowing that you're willing to make a change, or you're willing to put your name in the hat, or you're willing. And so sometimes that's definitely a good approach. And then, I do think that there are many different women's organizations around, particularly Huntsville, too. And activities, podcasts that are going on that, you can see what are the different opportunities. But specific to, a person in a job, I would immediately say, talk to your boss, talk to, if not them, talk to someone that you recognize in your group, and you ask them about the opportunities. And I think that makes a big difference. And people know that you're willing to put your name in the hat. And again, it puts the idea in someone else's brain. That says, hey, I'd like to do something different. So next time you hear of something, would you keep me in mind? There's always that was very successful for me.
I love that.
And then seeing that there's someone else that you see who's doing a job that you go, I'm interested. It kind of goes back to the shadowing a little bit. It can be a peer. Tell me a little bit about your job. What do you like about it, Because a lot of times you've got to find the job that fits your personal life, too. There may be flexibilities that you may need because of children or commitments or family or who knows. And so there's all the different opportunities, again, that you can go back to your human resources office. And most times they have services to help with job placement and do. It's kind of just going out and ask and finding.
Right. Because it is especially good, like you said, to be able to utilize those resources to be able to help out. Because it can be super daunting of after a certain point realizing, oh my goodness, wait, this might not be for me. I think I may be the best fit for something else.
Right.
It can be a little bit of, like that said, realizing yourself moments.
Because I know there's been a lot of folks that have, over my career,
Yeah.
that have come to me that have said, I'd like to do something different, or I'd like an exposure at this, and I, was able to help them,
Yeah.
or get them to talk to someone else that then, they had a match that they ended up changing careers or finding a different opportunity that helped them grow, and I think that's really how you need to do it.
Yeah.
And don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to ask. Don't feel like you're stuck and there's nothing you can do. There's always things that a lot of times when I ask somebody what they'd like, I'd say, well, what do you want to do first? What is it you want to do? Because when you go and ask someone for help,
Yeah.
if you come through the door and just say, help me,
Right.
they might could, but they really, first question I always ask someone is, well, what would you like to do? What inspires you?
Right.
What are you thinking? And as a result of that, you start having the conversation, and then it helps a person help you be able to say, well, how about go talking to, let me get you in touch with.
Right.
I mean, how many times just do that approach, take 5
Yeah.
minutes. Do you have time for a coffee? Do you have time for a Coke or whatever? Do you have a few
Yeah.
minutes? Just taking that time, and as a result of that, you'll be amazed at how it opens up the door. And it really, a lot of times you find you really don't need someone's help. You really can do it on your own, but yet it's just talking through it.
Yeah. Well, I believe that's all the advice questions that I have for now.
Is my future plans right now, as I have been retired from NASA for a year. And during that time, one of the things I did was, and I encourage everybody to do, invest in yourself and find out what you want to do
Yeah.
in your next phase. And so no matter what the age, there's always the next phase of what you want to do.
Right.
I'm enjoying retirement, but I'm also, spent time to do things that I didn't get to do.
Yeah.
Taking art lessons, doing,
love that.
yoga, and I enjoy investing in myself and doing things to perk myself up that I didn't get to do.
Right.
So there's things like that is always taking time to balance your life.
Yeah.
But then, one of the things that I'm looking forward to doing is events like today where
Yeah.
hopefully my wisdom can pay for it, or at least I can say, I did this, don't do that.
Right.
Do as I say, not as I do. But then I think there's things too that I'm looking forward to, more engagement in some STEM activities and being supportive to other women and working with universities and companies to see how I can help them reach their goals based
Yeah.
on some of my experience. So I'm looking to kind of be an independent advisor to some things too. So like I said, I'm just kind of open to ideas, open to things that are out there, and just being flexible,
Yeah.
and I know it will come. And if not, hopefully, I'll be in good shape and have a good attitude and just focusing on living life to the fullest.
Oh, I love that. I have actually one advice question now. You talked a little bit about career-life balance. What advice do you have about that?
Well, I was going to say, it goes back to some days I used to have an A+, and some days I had an F as far as... And to me is strive for the balance. Strive for the balance that you have, taking care of yourself, health-wise, physically wise, mentally wise, the work that you've got to do, balancing, family. And then to me, the biggest thing is not every time does one item always win. And so what I'm really meaning by that is there's times where we all have to make commitments where you have to give a certain area more focus.
Right.
But it really is having that check, and it's, your spouse or a significant other or your children or a friend that kind of tells you when you're getting out of kilter, of when they can see the stress in your face, or they see that you're getting in a habit, and that you really need to do as I call it, a check. And so to me, there's a kind of an accountability partner that helps. And so really trying to balance, knowing that, you try to balance what you've got to do, but really trying to strive so that you don't get in a rut and really burn yourself out, because, I've gone through it where you burn yourself out and you're no good to yourself or anyone else. So
Yeah.
it really is. You've got to invest in yourself. It's taking time. A lot of times when you say, I don't have time to take time, it really is important to take time and take a breath and spend time on yourself.
Yeah, I can definitely deeply resonate. And I'm sure that a lot of individuals can resonate with that, of being able, that sort of mindset of feeling, I don't have the time, I don't have the time, I don't have the time. But that is so important to prevent that burnout, because once you're there, it can be really hard to get out of
And
it.
stress is not good for anyone. There's a healthy stress that gets you incentivized to do things that
Right.
challenges you, but then when it's overcome with stress, that's not good.
Exactly. So being able to balance that is
Right.
extremely important. Okay, well, now that's all the questions that I have, Miss Singer. Again, thank you so much for joining us on this episode of A Girl's Guide to STEAM. It's been amazing talking with you.
Well, thank you so much. I enjoyed being here and loved it.
Well, good. And if anyone is interested in, like you said, being in internships or being involved in NASA, what's the best, or not in NASA specifically, but in the Marshall Space Flight Center, what's the best way to reach out to them?
As I say, it is on the website, nasa.gov, and then from there you can see, different centers and opportunities that's going on in different regions,
Yeah.
as well as the different things that center specializes in. And in addition to that, then you can see the different opportunities for internships, being able to do rotations, different things like that are opportunities, and different STEM engagement events. So there's opportunities on the website to be able to see.
Yeah. And if, per se, a young woman, college student or something is interested in having you as a mentor, per se, I guess what's the best way to reach out to you about that?
Probably the best way is to reach out to me through LinkedIn. And just, I'm available on LinkedIn, and there's many times that different folks will ask me through there to make a connection. And that's how usually the best way to get in touch with me.
Yeah.
is.
Well, awesome. And again, thank you so much for joining us on this episode. And thank you for joining us on this episode of A Girl's Guide to STEAM. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.